Hi, everybody. I'm Althea Brooks, and I'm Senior Director of Lifetime Learning in the Office of Engagement. And here at the University of Virginia, we've been offering more than the score for 19 years. I'm always excited to make that announcement that we're 1 year older. That means I'm also 1 year older. We partner with the Alumni Association to offer you this great program on Saturday mornings before the home football game. And we have our staff working every Saturday morning, so thank them for me. We also have a large crowd joining us from around the world. We've got about 3,500 people registered for Larry Sabato this morning. That's pretty exciting. Okay, so we also have lots of virtual and in-person programs coming up. So visit our website at engagement.virginia.edu/learn. Register and share with friends. All right, before we begin, go ahead and silence the ringer on your phone. Be here now for Larry. A handheld microphone will come around in case you you'd like to ask a question at the end of the program. And please kindly state your name and your UVA affiliation. And please just leave it to one brief question. Comments, you can hold those for later. We are thrilled to have Larry Sabato back with us. He is the only faculty member that we invite back every year for more than the score. Okay, allow me to briefly introduce him. So Larry's bio is about 6 pages long. I've been able to cut that down. No. You want to hear from him,
Yeah,
right?
No, don't.
Okay, so Larry J. Sabato is the founder and director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics. He's a Rhodes Scholar and is recognized as one of the nation's most respected political analysts. He appears often on CNN International, and BBC. Mr. Sabato has taught over 20,000 students. Wow. The University of Virginia has given him its highest honor, the Thomas Jefferson Award. Mr. Sabato is celebrating his 54th year of association with the University of Virginia. Sabato has won 4 Emmys and is a New York Times bestselling author who's edited or written over 24 books. I don't know when he has time for anything else. Sabato is the editor and lead author of his most recent book, The Red Ripple, the 2022 midterm elections and what they mean for 2024 election. His books are over here. Please buy 1 or 2 or more copies. They make excellent gifts for you and friends. Please help me thank and welcome Larry Sabato to More Than the Score.
Althea, thank you so much. Can you all hear me? You can hear me now. Okay, good. Althea does a terrific job, and we've worked together all these years on lots of different programs, and this is a terrific one. Reunions is great too in June, and if you are a UVA graduate, I would encourage you to come to reunions. It's always in early June, either one weekend or 2 weekends, depending on how many classes are included, and really it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You see a lot of people that you knew from your class. You meet new people. I get to see old friends, and I feel better about myself because I never forget a single name, not one of them. Fortunately for me, they're all named Buddy, every one of them. I recommend that to anybody who's having trouble with names. Oh, Buddy, how are you? You look terrific. That always works. It's wonderful to see a lot of you here today, and we'll have a little discussion about the election without fistfights. All fights are banned in this room. All fights are banned. Not that there has ever been one, but if ever there were an election where there would be one, it's probably this one. 2016, 2020 were kind of the same way. I apologize for sitting, but I went to Birmingham and saw a group that wasn't directly affiliated with UVA, but I could not believe how many who's were in there, how many graduates, both older and younger. And Parka was the name of the group, and I enjoyed that thoroughly, except for the last 15 minutes of the plane ride in, which went right into the first band of that hurricane. I would not recommend that you ever fly if there's even a band of a hurricane. So we got jostled, and my back is killing me, and I just learned about stem cell injections, and I'm getting one, okay? So you remember, okay, you'll know who to sue if anything happens to me. The Greens over here. All right, where should I begin? Look, it is the election from hell. And I'm not saying who's in there. That's up to you to judge. I think some have been working off some years while they're still here. I'll leave that to your imagination. Look, every election year is different. Some of you, maybe many of you, remember 1968, which is the year I often compare this to. Not that it's exactly similar, and there are a lot of different events that happened then that are not happening now, and vice versa. But it was an awful year. I think anybody who lived through 1968 would agree it was an awful, awful year. And for the younger ones here, that was the year the year of the Tet Offensive, and Vietnam going on and on and on after years, and then it would go on and on and on for years more. And then Lyndon Johnson accepted reality, realizing he was not going to win another term. Gee, does that sound familiar? And withdrew a little bit earlier than this president did, withdrew at the end of March. I can still remember sitting on the couch with my dad watching Johnson give this long address on Vietnam. All of his addresses were long. He loved to be on TV. And it went for an hour. And right at the end, as we were all falling asleep, he popped, I shall not seek, nor will I accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president. And my dad and both of us were like half asleep, and we turned to one another and said, what did he just say? So that started it off. And by the way, he had been in the mid-30s. His average at the time, we didn't have polls like we have today. We had Gallup, which was the gold standard. We do not have a gold standard poll today. That's news to the New York Times. They do not have the gold standard poll, though they tell you that every time they publish the Siena College New York Times poll. So don't be led down the garden path just because they claim to be. But his average was 36. When Biden withdrew, his polling average was 36. Johnson, frankly, the country was so relieved when Johnson got out. His approval rating went to 46. No, it really did. And I thought, well, I guess something similar will happen to Biden, and it did. There was one poll that had him at 46, and I said, there you go. But now he's in the low 40s. He was in the mid-30s, so we're more cynical today than we were in 1968, if that's possible. We don't want to go through 1968 anymore, the assassinations and all the rest of it. A very distressing year, all told. And we haven't had that. We did have an assassination attempt, and it's scary when things like that happen. And today they have so many layers of Secret Service and police. There's just no excuse for it. There just is for an assassination attempt. These people should be caught well before the situation. And some of them saw him and seemed to be pointing him out to others as though it were a zoo. But very odd what happened that day. Anyway, there's just no excuse for it. Back then, I said I wasn't going to go back, but I like the past a lot better than the present. And, I'm thinking about transferring to the history department. Because I've lived so much of it now, I can remember, and I do. I have a class, the JFK class, that actually goes through presidents from Truman to whoever's president today or whoever will be president next semester. And it's so much fun for me because I get into everything that's happened and can add personal anecdotes and once I got involved, I was there for a lot of it, went to a lot of these events. And it never occurred to me that that bores students, but that's their problem. You know, at my stage, you know, course evaluations don't matter at all. So, you know, lots of other things don't matter either. But anyway, it's funny how things will change over time and very quickly. So Biden dropped out after that debate, June 27th. And I don't want to belabor the point, but it was absolutely the worst performance by any presidential nominee ever. There have been 37 general election presidential debates since and including 1960. And if anything proved that we should not be electing presidents at age 78, which is what Biden was. Oh, let's see, who's 78 this year? It's just I'm sorry, it's too old. We've got to get back to electing vigorous presidents in their 40s and 50s and early 60s who can live through the stress and maintain their sanity and their brain power without word salads. It would be nice. And we've just got to get back to that. I assume we will at some point. Maybe it'll be this November, maybe it'll be another November, but this is it, I hope. I hope people have learned this lesson. In any event, it proved to everybody that what people had been saying. I had a senator who's a Democrat who told me, this was a couple months, it was November of 23, so it was before the election season started. And he startled me by saying, and he obviously he put it on deep background, I can quote what he said, but I can't give the name. But he said, now you know that there is no possibility of Biden being the nominee or living through the year or managing to win in his current condition. And I said, really? I mean, because I see the same things you do. I don't want to give too much away, but they do not invite me regularly into the White House to have personal discussions with whoever the president is. So I only knew what you knew, you know. And I said, well, tell me, what are you talking about? And he told me about a recent meeting with Biden, and let's just say it didn't go well, and not because Biden disagreed with him about some subject. He just wasn't capable. And I'm sure, you know, he was capable at some times and some days, and he wasn't capable on other days and other times. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it surprised me to the extent that I didn't think it would have that kind of effect. Well, he was absolutely correct. And he was one of the first people out there after June 27th. In fact, on the night of June 27th, no, during the debate, you should see the emails I got 5 minutes into that debate. I could hardly focus on the debate because of the emails I was getting. There was no way he was going to survive and win. I guess he could continue to run, but he just could not have won. Anyway, this is what I do in class. That's why they're asleep. You understand? But it's hard for me to state it. We'll quit at some point and take your questions. So Biden dropped out, totally unprecedented in American history. We've never had an effective nominee, and he was the nominee. He had all but 100 delegates or whatever it was for uncommitted, and there are over 4,000 delegates at the Democratic Convention. All he had to say was, I'm still running. And he would have been the nominee. So I give him full credit for finally accepting reality. And we haven't gotten the full story about what happened. All of us, we have not gotten the full story. Sure, a lot of things went on that we don't know. We'll eventually know because people will talk after the election is over when they're writing their post-election books because they want them to sell. You got to include some interesting stories. But he did the right thing in the end, and that's really all you can ask of most politicians. So he pulled out, and then it could have just dissolved into complete chaos at that point. So I do give credit to the Democratic Party leaders, Biden included, for insisting on an orderly process that produced a nominee, whether you like the nominee or not. It would have been, this is a better situation than could easily have developed. Very easily have developed, and it was starting to descend into chaos. They acted at just the right moment. And really, if you're going to pick a substitute nominee, it makes sense to pick the vice president, assuming she's functioning, she's not 78. Because what is a vice president? It's standby equipment. That's what they are. John Adams, I am nothing, but I may be everything. That has summed up the vice presidency all these years. So they did it, and it wasn't easy because, lots of people had their presidential ambitions stirred, and they all look in the mirror in the morning and see a president, every one of them. And they whistle "Hail to the Chief" in the shower, and I'm not even kidding. They actually hum or sing "Hail to the Chief." I've heard one senator do it in the halls of the Senate. It's kind of obvious, buddy. I mean, really, buddy. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, so we got through that, and it could have been a complete disaster. Then we had the assassination attempt, which at first blush seemed to most people to be potentially the end of the election. Because with an assassination attempt, you could see Trump's numbers skyrocketing. Well, why didn't they? Because they didn't. Why didn't they? They went up a tiny bit briefly. They didn't for two reasons. The first is, well, he's very, very controversial. I don't know how many of you have not noticed that. And we live in a very polarized era. Everybody almost knows where they stand. And let me correct the pollsters. I don't even want to get into it. But let me correct them. Because they love to focus your attention on the whatever it is, usually 15% or so, undecided. Totally untrue. When you investigate the 15%, and I've done this for years, doesn't just apply this year, you find that somewhere around half, I could give you another percentage, but let's just say half, are what we call low information voters. A lot of them are young voters who aren't even registered to vote yet. They're young voters, they don't know very much about politics. It's the last thing they want to get involved in, at least at that age. And so they say they're undecided. They're not going to vote. The vast majority, despite our efforts, and we try at the Center for Politics, that's Center for Politics, 100% tax deductible gifts. That one, that's Center for Politics. There are other ones that don't give you the tax deduction, 100%, at a guarantee. So they're not even in the system, and they're older voters too. And I'm not blaming them. Of course, we want everybody involved, but some people work 3 jobs to feed their families and whatever it may be. They're busy, and they should be involved in politics. It directly affects their life and their economic life, but they can't. So that's half of them approximately. The other half, and this is actually true, are people who know full well who they're going to vote for. And they tell their family and friends and anybody else they encounter, I just don't know. There are good things and bad things, but get real. I mean, at this point, they get it. All but like 4 or 5% that are truly undecided, and half of them won't vote either. They're the most likely not to vote. So when you see that 15%, forget about it. And they usually break, not terribly different than the electorate that admitted who they were for. They can break a few points higher in this direction or higher in that direction, but they don't change the results of an election unless it's 2,000 and there are 537 votes that determine who's president. Then it makes a difference. And for all I know, that will happen again this year. If you believe the polls, you would think it might happen. And the news media have an interest in making you believe that it is tight as a tick, as they love to say. It's as tight as a tick. Because it keeps you watching. It keeps you, if it's over, they hate landslides. Oh my God, they hate landslides. So this is ideal for them. It's just absolutely ideal. I don't know I hope I'm not too cynical, but it's mainly about clicks and money. You do know that. Eyeballs, clicks, and money. That pretty much defines the news media. Sorry for those of you who are in the news media. I've been around you too long. I know exactly what motivates you. Not the average reporters, but the executives. Oh my God, it's all about, beating the competition. Who would want to do that? Okay, and then almost immediately you had the Republican convention. And it was going well, reasonably so. J.D. Vance was not a home run. Maybe a base hit, and I'm being generous. And you see why people who really know him. I didn't know him very well. I did read Hillbilly Elegy. I thought it was pretty good. On my mother's side, I've got a lot of relatives from Appalachia. And so, I get it. I get what he was talking about, and it was a reasonable argument. I didn't fully agree with it, but it was a reasonable argument. But he's really not very good at this, at politics. It's like he missed his calling. He should have been a member of the faculty someplace. He would have fit right in. And you can interpret that however you wish. He doesn't quite get what appeals politically and what doesn't. I've never seen a sadder video than the one of him in that donut shop, trying to do common daily talk, average talk with average workers. And they were looking at him like he was from Mars. And that's not fair. He's from the moon, but not Mars. But he's just not very good at this because he's only run once, and he runs in Ohio, which used to be the bellwether, a title of a book written by the managing editor of the Crystal Ball at UVA's Center for Politics. But you all from Ohio, you don't matter anymore. You are like the other, or you're in the 43 states that don't matter anymore. There are only 7 states that elect presidents. I've often wondered why the parties don't organize migration to some other states that are maybe close to being swing states. It would help them. Or maybe even one of the 7 if it's reasonably close, like Arizona or Georgia, Nevada, or the blue wall states. A new 100,000 people could tip the balance one way or the other, but for whatever reason, they have not done so. Instead, they prefer to throw the money into the paid media coffers, spending money on all those ads that have remarkably little effect. They really do. It should be get out the vote activities and voter contact and that kind of thing. That is what produces additional votes. In the old days, TV commercials were rare enough so people paid attention. They enjoyed seeing them almost. The first one I ever remember, because my father loved it, was the prancing elephants for Dwight Eisenhower. I thought it was a cartoon. I thought, what are they doing electing a cartoon character to be president? But it fit in at my age. It fit in perfectly. So anyway, where am I? I've gotten past J.D. Vance. I've said enough, and I hope I'm not offending any of the childless cat ladies who are in the room. And by the way, I want you to know, those of you who have pets, I'm a vegetarian. You have nothing to fear from me. You have nothing to fear from me, okay? It's not just Trump and Vance. What a weird thing to, propose. Wouldn't you question that immediately? Like, is that true? And if so, was it one cat? Wouldn't you ask some questions? But no, you just accept it if it's favorable to you. But RFK Jr., and I don't want to get into that, that's the rest of the lecture. He's a piece of work, and his own family thinks so, and they'll tell you at great length. Lots of things haven't come out about him. If they had, he was already at 5 and below. You know that. He'd started in the upper teens. He'd fallen when he withdrew to 5 and below, and he would have been at 1 or 2, if that, on election day. So it's much less significant than you think. But the interview I'll always remember is where he described his lifestyle, and he called himself an adventurous eater. He stops the car to get out and pick up roadkill for dinner. Now, I'm sorry, maybe other people here do that. Stay away from me. I never want to know you, okay? I just don't want to hear about it. But anyway, you got me off track again, and now I got to get back to this. So Biden exits on July 21st, and Harris was the nominee within 48 hours. It's truly amazing, because the Democratic Party, when I was growing up, and I was active in it when I was young, I was out there passing out palm cards for John F. Kennedy. I was 7 and then turned 8 during the campaign. I was a very weird kid. There's no question about it. I admit it fully. You knew that anyway, didn't you? And I always tell this story because it's absolutely true. The next street over, it was a great experience for me. It toughened me up, and that's what politics does. So I'm passing out these palm cards, going door to door, and this lovely lady came to the door, and she was perfectly pleasant at first, and she said nice things. I think she thought I was selling candy for school or something. And so I'm giving her, I just wanted to give you this card for John F. Kennedy, I think is what I said. Well, I'll never forget this. I could see her right in front of me. Her face turned from a pleasant expression to a scowl instantly, at which point she said, "We do not support papists in this household." Slam! I'm 8 at that point. I'm 8 years old, okay? I didn't even know what a papist was. You know. I asked my father later, he explained it to me. But politics is real. It's the cutting edge of democracy. You don't want it to be sweet and nice. You really don't. It's how we work things out. We go too far sometimes, no question. But it's not supposed to be nice. You're not supposed to feel good all the time anyway. So anyway, how did I get off on that? I'm enjoying this. I don't know whether you all are, but at my age, and maybe some of your ages, really, if you're enjoying yourself, who cares about anybody else? It doesn't really matter. And I don't drink either. I don't drink. I really don't. I did when I was a student here, yes. And I hit my quota by the 3rd year. Lifetime quota. Okay. Well, then so the Republican convention, its effect was cut off by what was happening in the Democratic Party. And then the Democratic convention went well. I was starting to say, as I was growing up, the Democratic Party was known as the factional party. They never got along, ever, for any reason. You know, you could propose anything and half of them would stand up and walk out. The Republicans were the managerial party. They drew heavily from the managerial class. So they were much better at organizing, really, than Democrats were. And they were the large majority after Roosevelt, after the New Deal. So this was incredible that Democrats could unite so quickly. Donald Trump is the reason, obviously. Tim Walz we could talk about forever. I thought it was going to be either Shapiro or Kelly, Senator Kelly, or Governor Shapiro, Pennsylvania, Arizona, to add electoral votes. I'm old-fashioned. I believe that electoral votes elect a president. But I've gotten out of touch. You know, it turns out that it's vibes. You know. And I don't get vibes at all. I never have. Okay, and then you had, and then the debate, which, look, the first one, it wasn't so much Trump won, it was that Biden crashed and burned, you know, and Trump had the sense to, for once, to stand there and not ruin it. Just stand there. And he didn't have to pile on. There was no need to. Plus, it would have looked like he was beating up on an elderly guy who couldn't function. So, you know, he did the right thing, and he won by a massive majority of those taken in those instant polls. And this time, it was the reverse. You know, Trump. It's incredible to me that he did not listen to a word that his advisors told him. Not one word. Don't let her get under your skin. She's going to mention your rallies. She's going to do this. Those are your hot buttons, blah, blah, blah. He went right down the list. Oh, no, I know what to do. And his famous line in private to friends is, if you're so smart, how come I'm president and you're not? Okay, well, I don't know. Look at our presidents. I'm not sure that proves anything if you're elected president. Okay. Okay. Nobody's interested in this. Let's just go on. Oh, I'm kidding. This is probably the only one you're interested in. And Althea's supposed to tell me when we've got to go to questions, and I'll just plain old quit. I mean, I'll answer your questions, but I'll quit. This is a long PowerPoint. It lasts for 2 classes. That's how we think. That's 50 minutes times 2. You know, but we don't have that long together. They're the 7 states in yellow. And for those of you who think that, you know, Minnesota and Virginia and New Mexico and New Hampshire are competitive, start drinking early on election day, okay? Because they ain't. It's the same old thing. and it has been. Now with Biden, if Biden had stayed on, I'm not sure California would have gone to him, frankly, at the end. But that's not the world we're living in now. Now, Texas, people always say, how come you've got Texas and Florida as likely instead of certain? I do it to ward off the nasty emails and tweets that I get from Democrats who live in those two states. And if I had a nickel for every time I've had a Texan in the last 30 years write me and say, Texas is about to turn blue. Texas is about to turn blue. It's happening this November. Texas is about to turn blue. It's still deep red, okay? But I don't put it as deep red so that it'll keep them from pressing the send key. And the same with Florida. Florida's gone from being 2,537 votes to being substantially, not wholly, but very substantially in one party's category. I mean, it's the last place you'd spend money unless you had unlimited sums and you had $1 billion to waste. Then you might compete in Florida. It's an expensive state. Just the media markets will cost you more than a couple of billionaires are willing to give you. So it's crazy, but we do that anyway. I hope it's okay. But what the new trend is? I hope I'm not giving anybody any ideas. They not only write me horrible letters and demand that I quit or be fired immediately for what I have said. See, it's free speech for me, but not for thee. That's always the slogan. Free speech for me, meaning them, but not for thee. But they send it to Ryan. That was the first step. Ryan knows better than try to fire me. I'd sue. I'd drag it out like Trump has dragged out these trials. I'd be dead before we ever got a decision. Look, I don't know. I'll tell you this much. Because we do something different at the Crystal Ball. Of course, we read the polls and criticize them heavily. There's so many. Oh my God, that's half the day. That is half the day. We get private ones as well as the public ones. Sometimes the private ones are more accurate. Sometimes they're less accurate. So what do you do? I mean, which ones do you believe? And the problem with the polling averages is both parties, and particularly the Republicans, have developed firms that tilt the numbers several points in their direction. So it will affect the polling average. Now, Democrats have caught on. They've got a couple that do that too. But it misleads you even on the polling averages. So you can't rely completely on polling. And let's see, is Rich Tao here? Tao? Have I got Rich? Yeah, Rich. I teach his son Ezra. Did you bring Ezra? Oh, this kid is a great student. He's a great student. I've had him in several classes, and he actually gets up at a reasonable hour. He can come to programs like this, and I salute him for it. I just wanted Mom and Dad to know that. But he really does. He's here. But anyway, he does a lot of the focus groups and has a relationship with at least one of the major networks. Sometimes focus groups can reveal more than polls can because real people are recorded saying real things, what they really think. Now, they're not representative samples, but they can show you things you can't learn any other way necessarily. And your friends are not a good focus group. I'm going to tell my dear mother, who was absolutely brilliant, but she didn't like politics. That was one reason why she was brilliant. She begged me not to go into this field because it was so dirty. Boy, was she right. But I'll never forget this. Election night 1964. See, I'm back to the 60s again. Election night 1964. And we're sitting there, and of course that was Johnson's landslide. It was over in a half hour, and the networks had to fill time, so they were starting to do projections for Senate and governor and so on. And we were living in Virginia, down in Norfolk. And so they projected, right after Lyndon Johnson, they projected one of the incumbent senators. I'm not going to mention his name. I don't want to get into any fights. And this incumbent senator won by his usual landslide. And I'll never forget it. My mother turned to my father and said, "That can't be. We always vote against him, and everybody we know votes against him. And he always wins." That's what we all think. We all say, no, my breakfast group is 100% for X. Well, good for them. Bully for you. It has nothing to do with the overall electorate. It really doesn't. So don't be misled by that. Mom, I'm sorry. Really, I am. She did lots of great things. Okay. Now, we can talk about anything you want to, but the closest ones are Arizona, Georgia. I'm tempted to say, and I will, well, they're all close, actually. And they could all change between now and election day. The one that we almost dropped from the 7 to begin with, and we would have made a major mistake if we had done it, was North Carolina. And this is interesting because there is a phenomenon called reverse coattails. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens. Remember, coattails happen from the top down. So a president producing extra votes can add votes to all the candidates from his or her party all the way down the ballot. Because we live in a hyper-partisan era, so people stick to one column. Well, every now and then, a party makes a big goof. Well, it's more than every now and then. But the Republicans in North Carolina, sorry for those of you who are Republicans from North Carolina, but I bet you agree with me, boy, did they make a mistake in nominating their lieutenant governor for governor. I'm going to use a technical term. He's a nutcase. Really. And he says, I mean, he makes Donald Trump look completely sane every day. I mean, it's that bad. It is that bad. And guess what? North Carolina, that normally leans Republican, and they always do just about for Senate and for president, although Trump only won it by 1.5 points, less than 1.5 points last time. So, you know, reasonably close. But he is so controversial that he is, not only is he going to lose decisively, and the Democrat, it didn't matter who the Democrats were running as long as that Democrat wasn't a nutcase, and he's not. The Democrat's going to win. There'll be another Democratic governor in North Carolina, but he's going to win so handily, really it's that Robinson will lose so badly, that it's affecting the rest of the Republican ticket in North Carolina. That even includes Trump. Now, I'm not willing to bet, given North Carolina's record, that Trump will end up losing North Carolina. But I am willing to bet North Carolina is a state that the Trump people never expected to have to spend as much money as they're spending now. Because that's just the way it is. That's the reverse coattails are having an effect there, and a couple other states, but that's the best example I can give you. This is very misleading because she's having a late honeymoon, which candidates can get under certain circumstances, and this is one of them. Doesn't always happen. I don't remember Hubert Humphrey having a late honeymoon, for example. Just to, you know, please you all get back to the 60s, okay? I know you love it. Trump, it is a very close race, and I've got to save time to talk about the polls, so I'm going to go on from there. You don't need this. You already know it. You know, just read it. What the Democrats will use, guess what? You could name these without me doing this slide. I put it in there because my staff did it, and they get mad if I don't. Okay, and that's what the Republicans use. Okay, you could have guessed that too. This I want to say. Do you remember even 3 months ago, every political analyst, not your crystal ball, we were right on the ball here, not on the ball. They were saying third parties will make the difference. It's going to be just like 2016 when Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, who's back as the Green Party candidate, I guess she got back from her dinner with Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin. Yeah, I mean, amazing, the things we tolerate in this country. But there we go, free speech for me and not for thee, I know. RFK looked to be the one that might influence the most, and we knew from the beginning, and his family knew, that if forced to choose, and they expected him at some point to drop out because reality would hit him, that he would help Trump. They were furious, obviously, for all kinds of reasons, and they were right. That's exactly what happened. But he looked like he was going to be the most powerful. Cornel West was important only because almost, maybe 30% of his voters wouldn't have voted otherwise, but the other 70% would have voted for Kamala Harris or even Biden. and obviously wouldn't if they voted for Cornel West. Well, the Republicans realized that. You know, the light went off. It wasn't much of a light because you didn't need much of a light. And they decided, we got to help this guy. He's a fine fellow. And so they helped him get the signatures for his petitions and raise the money he needed, and they got him filed and on the ballot in quite a few states. And look, it's done by both parties have done that. Both parties have done that. It's a flaw in our system, frankly. I don't know how you fix it, but it is a flaw. And he's not on enough ballots to have an impact. But, you know, if it's 2,000 all over again, even 0.5% could make a difference, but I doubt it. A lot of people have caught on to Jill Stein, and she's doing much more poorly than she did in 2016, and she did awfully in 2016, but she did probably cost Hillary Clinton the election. She did cost her the election in 2 of the 3 blue wall states, but all 3 were needed in order to elect her rather than Trump, so I kind of condition that. The Libertarian, I wouldn't know him if he were in this room, so I couldn't tell you much about him, but normally Libertarians take more votes from Republicans than Democrats. It's about 60-40, but half of their vote won't vote if they don't have a Libertarian to vote for. And they matter because of the Electoral College. Well, I'm going to make a bold prediction. Unless it's 2,000 all over again, they're not going to matter. So there's one thing that we thought we were sure of that we know is now probably false. Now, on to polls, and I'm quitting. Where is Althea? You deserted me. No, you're not over here. You're supposed to tell me when to go to. It's too late. It's too late now, Althea. I want to focus on polls because I am so sick of them dominating the coverage. Another reason why they dominate, other than clicks and money, is because people get excited by them. They love to see numbers because they think they're objective. And the networks say, well, this is objective, except a lot of people think they're banked one way or the other, which really actually isn't true. They're just inaccurate. You know, that's the way it happens, for the networks anyway. But the truth is, as I'll show you shortly, they're really off in lots of different ways. I know you can't see all the numbers. I just want you to look at the bars, okay? The blue bars mean that the final average of the polls overestimated the Democratic vote by that much. Okay, and that much means 4, 5, 6%. Well, guess what? Most elections are decided within 4, 5, 6%. And the red bars, they overestimated the Republican vote by that much. Notice in the beginning, they didn't know what they were doing at all about polling. And they were surveying, you know, people who owned refrigerators and cars, and because they thought, well, they're certain to vote. Well, they were certain to vote, except that back in those days, they were luxury items. So guess who voted? You know, in their universe, Republicans disproportionately voted. That's how that ridiculous poll in 1936 projected Alf Landon, who carried 2 states, as the winner against FDR. And also Harry Truman is one of the reasons why the polls got 1948 wrong. Anyway, let's go. See, I talked about another year other than 1968. Okay, so then you had 1960. That's the JFK number right there. And they had Kennedy winning by more. Was it the polls? No, in that case, it was the fact that he was Catholic. It really was. That was an election about religion. 80% of the Catholics voted for JFK, and 69% of the Protestants voted for Nixon. I mean, and it wasn't as though religious figures were endorsing. It was a very different time. You didn't have religious figures, you know, laying their hands on a candidate and saying, here is our new golden calf, you know. They didn't do that back then, but people got it anyway, and it mattered a lot more to people in those days maybe than it does today. Well, not to a certain segment, but anyway. And then 64, they overestimated Johnson. Why? Because a certain percentage of people who wanted to vote for and did vote for Goldwater, who had become very controversial, which is hilarious given where Goldwater ended up. But at the time, we thought he was a radical right-wing, blah, blah, blah. He turned out to be a moderate Republican who drove the Christian right nuts. But you never know what's going to happen. Anyway, they didn't tell they would not tell the pollsters. They would lie. Or they would say, I don't know. They knew full well, just like people today, who they were going to vote for. But in the polling averages, it meant that Lyndon Johnson was going to get 65% of the vote. No, he got 60%. That's a big number, but it's not 65%. So anyway, 68, incredibly, they got it almost right. Tiny little edge for Hubert Humphrey, who the last polls showed was going to win. He finished a half a point down, less than a half point, no, half point down from Nixon in the national vote. Electoral College did 5. I don't care how many fingers you put up. I'm not quitting. See, she put up 5 fingers, like I got to quit in 5 minutes. I obey my own soul. Okay? I love Althea. We get along great. All right. Anyway, look at 2016 and 2020. 2016, they only got Hillary wrong by 1.3%. That is, they thought Hillary was going to get 1.3% more of the vote than she did. That was the election. If she had gotten 1.3% more, she would have carried the blue wall states. She would have been elected. But that really mattered. And in 2020, they got Biden way off, because by that point, Trump had become radioactive for lots of people, even more so than he was in 2016. In 2016, a lot of people said, the guy is, he looks crazy, but he'll grow in office the way they all do. He's just saying these things. He'll have advisors around him who will make sure he doesn't go off the rail, which he did for a while, which he won't have in the second term, because he isn't appointing any of them. There's a new bunch he's bringing in, Project 2025. Okay, so that's 4 points. They got Biden wrong by 4 points. It's how he almost lost the election, winning by 7 million votes. But the Electoral College came very close to giving Donald Trump a second term, and did give him a first term. So I don't want to get into the Electoral College, because that will start fistfights. Actually not. The only fistfights are done by political scientists about the Electoral College. All right, last one. No, that's not it. That isn't it. All right, I'm going to tell you what the last one was. Tyler, another -5. Where is he? Okay, I'm sorry. You just lost another $5,000. Okay, no, he's a great assistant. He does a terrific job. Both of his parents work for UVA. He's a UVA grad. I only hire UVA people. I really do. I only hire people connected to UVA. It's illegal, and nobody's figured it out. Please don't tell anybody. It's probably, because I'll just drag the suits out. It won't matter. Anyway, before I finish up, excellent study was done by Pew Research Center that showed, first of all, that the polls as published are wrong even right up to the last week if it turns out to be a close election. We are, let's just say, 2 months out, to make it easy on me. They are still, the polling average is still, based on historical averages, wrong by 4 full percentage points. Okay? 4 full percentage points. This election is way within the 4%, which means you can't rely on what they're saying, and they have a good excuse. They'll never give it to you, because it will make you pay less attention to them. Then the Pew study also showed that because there are unaccounted for sources of error, polls ought to list double the margin of error they do. It's a statistical margin of error that they list, but for a perfectly conducted poll. But there are all kinds of other sources of error that can't be quantified. So if a poll says they got a 4% margin of error, make it 8%. Well, how worthless can you be? All right, so I just want to tell you that so that you'll get, there will be fewer heart attacks and strokes in here, whichever way it's going at the end. Now, you can have them on election night, once you know the result. Or, no, I'm sorry, you can have them in December, January, once you know the result. But not until then. Not until then. Okay, here's the most important thing. You absolutely should subscribe to the Crystal Ball. It is absolutely free. Oh, that's stuff that I put back there. It's free, Crystal Ball. Just Google Sabato's Crystal Ball, or even the Crystal Ball. That's how prominent we've become. We're sister Sister Rose no longer pops up. It's Sabato's crystal ball. We've beaten her. We've beaten her for all time. But it's free. You get updates on what's happening politically 3 or 4 times a week, and they're projections. They're not just, Kamala Harris said this today. Donald Trump said that today. You can read that in the newspapers. Or, excuse me, nobody reads newspapers. You can see that on television. Oh, nobody watches TV anymore. Well, whatever it is you do, that's how you can find out. As I always say, despite my pushing the crystal ball, he who lives by the crystal ball ends up eating ground glass. All right, do we have any time left for questions? Yes. She says yes. Althea says yes, and she runs this place.
That one right
now,
here?
there are people who are going to pick. I do not pick. I got enough enemies. Oh, Dana and Susan are picking. You're Dana? See, I had a 50-50 chance of getting it right, and I got it wrong.
Hi, my name is Pat. You talked a bit about...
Class of?
2009 college.
Oh, God, you're young. I hate talking to young people. Go ahead.
Hopefully I can make it up with my question.
I hope so.
You said...
I'll be the judge of that.
You said that Trump would appoint different people if he gets in, so I wanted you to weigh in. Who would Harris? Would she keep people going into the new administration if she wins, or would she get her own people for cabinet and appointees?
That's a great question. I've never known a president who would defer to his or her predecessor, even if they were both of the same party or even president and vice president. They want to make their own mark. And every president, no matter who he is and what his philosophy is, looks at that chair, in the Oval Office and can't imagine anybody else sitting there. Now, none until Donald Trump had tried to do something about it. But January 6th I'm talking about. And it was real. I'm sorry if you don't believe it, but it was absolutely real and planned in advance. The tweet gave it away. Come to Washington. It'll be wild. But she's going to appoint her own people. Of course she's going to appoint her own people. You think she just wants to carry forward on Biden's people? There may be 1 or 2 or 3. Tom Vilsack is apparently the permanent Secretary of Agriculture. Those of you from farm states, it's important. It's actually important to all of us. I almost stepped in it. It's important to everyone. I'll stop there. So you knew what I was going to say. Thank you. So, that's the answer is no. I'll bet you. No, I can't bet. We actually have a rule. We cannot bet on anything that is even vaguely political at the Center for Politics. Nobody can bet on anything. All right. And you did a great job, and I'm sorry that I gave you a difficult time, but it's my right. Hey, this is great. 2 young people. It gives me hope. You want to ask about 1968? Is that what it is?
No. I'm Owen Engel. I'm actually.
You're who?
Owen Engel.
Owen. Okay.
Yeah, That's your. I'm
You're
actually
what?
I'm actually in high school. I'm hopefully future.
Oh my God, a high school. That is amazing. Hey Ezra, you met your match here. You met your match. Okay.
My question is on the issue of abortion. Do you see abortion referendums causing increased turnout for Democratic voters or ticket switching, or do you think it won't affect elections?
You all heard that, right, about abortion, the abortion referenda in quite a number of states, and you'll see it for several more election cycles too. Does it help Democrats overall? Yes, but the percentage varies a lot, and here's why. They almost always pass, usually by landslides. The lowest I've seen has been upper 50s, which was not enough in that case because the provision was 60% in order for this to be added to the Constitution. But in another state, it did pass 60. So you have to look at each state's rules, but that's an enormous majority. So you say, well, my God, given that abortion is obviously very important, or reproductive rights, very important to these people, surely they're going to vote Democratic, top to bottom. No, some do. But the truth is that the Republicans go in, let's say Republicans who may be pro-choice or pro in favor of putting this in the Constitution of their state or whatever, they kind of separate that. They go ahead and vote for the candidates they want. and then they vote yes, if the answer is yes, to get a pro-choice amendment in the Constitution on that amendment. Well, they've already passed that. And it's why you can't assume that a single issue, whatever the issue is, will automatically convert into a vote for the candidate who has that belief. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money to make the connection, and even then it might not work. I mean, I'll bet you all know a fair number of Republicans who are pro-choice on abortion, but they're still voting Republican. And the large majority of the Nikki Haley people will end up voting for Trump. It always happens. And I'm not saying that because of this combination of candidates. I'm just saying that's what people do. We live in a very partisan era. We're very polarized. And even if it's a 50-50 case and they're weighing it, they're one of those rare voters who's actually weighing it up to the moment they go into the polls or mark their ballot at home, whatever they're doing, they will end up 9 times out of 10 going with their party's candidate. That's just the way it is. I hope it will. I don't know. It's not necessarily a bad thing always, but it is a bad thing for a country as free as ours is that wants to stay together. You know, I've noted a tremendous increase in the number of people. Yeah, they're on the extremes, but they're looking for a breakup. They want to have their people that they believe in and they like only really in their camp, in their states, in their country. And so a fair number of the red state people want the blue state people in another country and vice versa. Well, that's not healthy. I mean, it really isn't healthy. It's not good for the country. And maybe that will change over time. I hope it will. I hope everybody hopes it will. What good is it going to do us to split? We'd probably go to war. I mean, we're human. Look at the number of wars around the country, around the world. Scary, frightening, depressing. What's next?
Got one back here in the back, way back here.
Back there? Okay.
Hey there.
I can't see you at all, just so you know.
It's okay. I'll just do it from back here. I'm Joey Giordano. I'm a third-year engineering major here at UVA.
What major?
It's an engineering major.
Engineer. Oh,
Yeah.
Now that's good because so many engineers and engineering students don't seem to be interested in politics. Everyone should be interested in politics. Everyone should major in politics. Every single person.
Yeah.
Okay, good for you. Try to spread it.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Classrooms, start talking. If there's a formula you don't get, raise your hand and ask, how do people come down on this presidential race? It'll save you.
It's pretty hard. They're all pretty antisocial.
Hey,
My question to you,
they're good candidates for a faculty.
So the question to you is, I guess I'm going to ask it first and I'm going to add a little detail onto it. But like the value to polling, right? So obviously campaigns, there's value for campaigns to polling. They want to figure out what they need to target when they're doing the campaigns. There's value to the media because they're making money off of it. There's value to other people who are making money off of it. But like, why should we care? Why shouldn't we go to November 5th or November 15th in December not knowing and just wait until the result comes out?
Boy, are you old-fashioned. That's exactly what we used to think. And it's why, election nights were really important and everybody gathered together. I mean, people were glued to their TVs, mainly to Uncle Walter. And I don't have to explain who Uncle Walter was to a lot of this crowd. I miss him. I had a long interview with him in 1991. I had more fun that day and learned some things I really shouldn't know. Those are the great interviews, when you learn things you shouldn't know. I'm trying to avoid your question. Look, I'll tell you I kind of agree with you, except there's no way to prohibit it because it comes under the First Amendment. You can't ban polling. In France and some other countries, all polling is banned for 72 hours or a week before the election or whatever, so that those late polls can't influence weak people who might want to go with the winner or whatever. And there are people who'll do that. But okay, fine, it's your country, you can do what you want, but the First Amendment prohibits that at any time. We can't do that. And it would be so easy to do it anyway, even if it were somehow banned. So you're suggesting something that is completely impractical and unconstitutional, but you're an engineer, so it's okay. You're not expected to know this stuff. But what good is polling? I always tell people, it's not the horse race. Yeah, it's helpful to the candidates in their campaigns. They know who to target with their ads. And remember, different people watch different shows. You know, the all-time show for blue-collar Americans was the Dukes of Hazzard. See, they don't even know what it is. This is our UVA crowd. Good for you. All right. I am not going to stop at 2 more questions, Althea. She's telling me, give me these instructions. But I'll tell you where they're good. They are good for, they're good for the issue questions. Because even if the numbers are off by 4 or 5 points in one direction or another, you do get a sense of how one group versus another thinks about this issue or that issue. It helps you to formulate your campaign and target your TV ads. And if you're a very flexible politician, it tells you what your stand is. There are actually politicians, you know, this is going to shock you. They look at the polls and determine where they stand. And I know you're shocked. She's got her mouth open. She is shocked. There was I'm not going to mention him because I liked him really, but he was asked in his first press conference as a candidate about statehood for the District of Columbia. And he clearly knew nothing about it and had never heard of it before. And he thought for a minute and then he turned around and literally asked his pollster, where do we stand on that? That was not good. That was not wise. But he ended up winning. See? Anyway, thank you for coming. I salute you. I think it's fantastic. All right. Althea said 2 more questions, and I love her. So,
Well,
2 more questions. Yes.
I would like us to get back to a little more local politics. Do you see the race for our representative with the problems that the 2 Republican candidates have
Here in the
had
5th district,
in the
where
5th
we are in.
district, right, making any difference in the ultimate result coming out in the election?
All right, just very briefly, we had an incumbent Republican who has been in for 4 years. He defeated an incumbent Republican, Denver Riggleman, because of a very strange convention they held during COVID that minimized turnout, and it was also held right next to his home county and a particular university that was leaning to him. I'm going to leave it at that. And so he won, but it's a Republican district. It's 56, 57% Republican. Now that isn't, you know, like many districts are 70, 80, 90% Republican thanks to redistricting. Same for Democrats, very same thing. So, you know, there's some measure of competition in the 5th. What makes this different, this particular representative, this time had to have a primary because there's a new law in Virginia that says you got to have, it's really because of this guy's convention that was so outrageous that they passed a law that you have to have a convention. Have to have a primary, I mean. So we had a primary, broader participation, and another Republican ran against him, another Republican who was the candidate of a certain former speaker who was kicked out of the speakership, you know, fairly recently, you know, a year or so ago, not to mention any names. And this congressman in this district was one of the leaders of kicking him out. So he wanted something that I've never seen in politics before, revenge. Retribution. Why are they all start with an R? Every single one of these words. Okay, so see, I'm just going to stretch out the answers. You said 2 questions. So, look, he was beaten by just, you know, a couple hundred votes. It was very, very close. And so the incumbent who lost asked, as was his right, for a recount. And there was a recount, and I think like a half a dozen votes changed. And by the way, I hope in this intelligent crowd, there is nobody in here who believes the big lie about voter fraud. This is my field. And I am telling you, and surely by now you know I try to tell the truth. If nothing else, I can be wrong, but I try to tell you what I think is the truth. It didn't happen. It is overwhelmingly honest. It's the best system in the world, and one of our who's was running it. Chris Krebs, former student of mine from the 90s, very proud of Chris, and for the Republicans saying, one of Sabato's students, well, he's a liberal. The guy's a liberal. No, he's a very conservative Republican. That's how he got the job in DHS. He was head of the cybersecurity agency within DHS that was in charge of running the elections. This guy and his team were terrific because they were determined to make sure that it was an honest election. And it was. He came out and said, I'm so proud of my team. They did a great job, and he was responsible, of course, too. It was absolutely honest. And he checked it loads of ways from foreign, they had everything tagged, from foreign governments and questionable groups on this side of the Atlantic and so on. And for his trouble, for being honest and working so hard to make sure it was a safe election and coming out and saying, I think this was the safest, most secure election in American history, Trump fired him on Twitter. He was a Trump appointee. So you can't say anything. No. You got to stick with the big lie. And that's going to be requirement number 1 in term 2. Do you support my lies? Okay? And you decide. It's your decision. That doesn't bother you? Do what you want. But I hope you will at least say, we do not have voter fraud other than a few isolated incidents here and there. This is going to be 160 million people voting. There are going to be a couple of people who slipped through who shouldn't have been voting or, have a felony on their record or whatever it may be. A few. It's a handful. It isn't even enough to have changed the election of 2000. No, I'm sorry. I have to tell you this because I run into so many intelligent, able people who should have figured this out a long time ago. And so I beg you, whatever your philosophy, don't undermine our country and our system, because that's what you're doing. See, I've avoided your question entirely. There's a Democrat running, and the guy who lost, the incumbent, is running a write-in campaign against the guy who won the primary. I don't think it'll work, but there's some slim chance because this is not a 70% Republican district, but I just can't see it. Not this year with the polarization we have. All right, the last question. Better be good, and it better be brief, Althea says. Brief? That's you, not me. I can be as long as I want.
Very brief question. Who's going to win?
I'd love to answer that, but Althea just went this. Just like this. As always, I've enjoyed being with you. I'm not going to answer that. You need to sign up and follow the crystal ball. That's where we answer that question. I'm not giving you a cheat sheet, sir. Shame on you. Shame on you. We banned lying, cheating, and stealing at the University of Virginia. If you were young enough, I'd turn you over to the honor committee. That should take care of you. Anyway, thank you so much.